June 19th, 1982. I am Ra. I greet you in the love and in the light of the one infinite Creator. We communicate now. Questioner. Could you first please give me the condition of the instrument? I am Ra. The physical complex energy deficit is somewhat increased by continued distortions towards pain. The vital energy levels are as previously stated, having fluctuated slightly between askings. Questioner. Could you tell me the situation with respect to our fourth and fifth density companions at this time? I am Ra. The fourth density League of Companions accompanies your group. The fifth density friend at this space-time nexus works within its own density exclusively. Questioner. By what means do these particular fourth density entities get from their origin to our position? I am Ra. The mechanism of calling has been previously explored. When a distortion which may be negatively connotated is affected, this calling occurs. In addition, the light of which we have spoken, emanating from attempts to be of service to others in a fairly clear and lucid sense, is another type of calling in that it represents that which requires balance by temptation. Thirdly, there have been certain avenues into the mind-body-spirit complexes of this group which have been made available by your fifth density friend. Questioner. Actually, the question I intended was, how do they get here? By what means of moving? I am Ra. In the mechanism of a calling, the movement is as you would expect. That is, the entities are within your planetary influence and are, having come through the quarantine web, free to answer such calling. The temptations are offered by those negative entities of what you would call your inner planes. These, shall we say, dark angels have been impressed by the service to self path offered by those which have come through quarantine from days of old. And these entities, much like your angelic presences of the positive nature, are ready to move in thought within the inner planes of this planetary influence, working from time-space to space-time. The mechanism of the fifth density entity is from density to density and is magical in nature. The fourth density of itself is not capable of building the highway into the energy web. However, it is capable of using that which has been left intact. These entities are, again, the Orion entities of fourth density. Questioner. You stated previously that fifth density entities bear a resemblance to those of us in third density on planet Earth, but fourth density does not. Could you describe the fourth density entities and tell me why they do not resemble us? I am Ra. The description must be baited under the law of confusion. The cause for a variety of so-called physical vehicles is the remaining variety of heritages from second density physical vehicular forms. The process of what you call physical evolution continues to hold sway into fourth density. Only when the ways of wisdom have begun to refine the power of what you may loosely call thought is the form of the physical complex manifestation more nearly under the direction of the consciousness. Questioner. If the population of this planet presently looks similar to the fifth density entities, I was wondering why this is. If I understand you correctly, the process of evolution would normally be the third density resembling that from which it evolved in second density, and then refining in fourth, and then again in fifth, becoming what the population of this planet looks like in third density. It seems to me that this planet is ahead of itself in the way the mind-body-spirit complex or body complex looks. What is the reason for this? I am Ra. Your query is based upon a misconception. Do you wish us to comment, or do you wish to re-question? Questioner. Please comment on my misconception, if that is possible. I am Ra. In fifth density, the manifestation of the physical complex is more and more under the control of the conscious mind complex. Therefore, the fifth density entity may dissolve one manifestation and create another. Consequently, the choice of a fifth density entity or complex of entities wishing to communicate with your peoples would be to choose to resemble your people's physical complex chemical yellow ray vehicles. Questioner. I see. Very roughly, if you were to move a third density entity from some other planet to this planet, roughly what percentage of all of those within the knowledge of Ra would look enough like those entities of Earth so that they would go unnoticed in a crowd? I am Ra. Perhaps 5%. Questioner. Then there is an extreme variation in the form of the physical vehicle in third density in the universe. I assume this is also true of fourth density. Is this correct? I am Ra. This is so. We remind you that it is a great theoretical distance between demanding that the creatures of an infinite creation be unnoticeably similar to oneself and observing those signs which may be called human, which denote the third density characteristics of self-consciousness. The grouping into pairs, societal groups, and races, and the further characteristic means of using self-consciousness to refine and search for the meaning of the milieu. Questioner. Well, within Ra's knowledge of third density physical forms, what percentage would be similar enough to this planet's physical form that we would assume the entity to be human even though they were a bit different? This would have to be very rough because of my definition being very rough. I am Ra. This percentage is still small, perhaps 13 to 15%, due to the capabilities of various second density life forms to carry out each necessary function for third density work. Thusly, to be observed would be behavior indicating self-consciousness and purposeful interaction with a sentient ambiance about the entity, rather than those characteristics which familiarly connote to your peoples the humanity of your third density form. Questioner. Now, in my line of questioning, I am trying to link to the creation of various logoi and their original use of a system of archetypes in their creation, and I apologize for possibly a lack of efficiency in doing this, but I find this somewhat difficult. Now, for this particular logos, in the beginning, prior to its creation of first density, did the archetypical system which it had chosen for its creations include the forms that would evolve, and in particular third density human forms, or was this related to the archetypical concept at all? I am Ra. The choice of form is prior to the formation of the archetypical mind. As the logos creates its plan for evolution, then the chosen form is invested. Questioner. Was there a reason for choosing the forms that have evolved upon this planet? And if so, what was it? I am Ra. We are not entirely sure why our logos and several neighboring logoi of approximately the same space-time of flowering chose the bipedal, erect form of the second density apes to invest. It has been our supposition, which we share with you as long as you are aware that this is mere opinion, that our logos was interested in, shall we say, further intensifying the veiling process by offering to the third density form the near complete probability for the development of speech taking complete precedence over concept communication or telepathy. We also have the supposition that the so-called opposable thumb was looked upon as an excellent means of intensifying the veiling process, so that rather than rediscovering the powers of the mind, the third density entity would, by the form of its physical manifestation, be drawn to the making, holding, and using of physical tools. Questioner. I will guess that the system of archetypes, then, was devised to further extend these particular principles. Is this correct? I am Ra. The phrasing is faulty. However, it is correct that the images of the archetypical mind are the children of the third density physical manifestations of form of the logos, which has created the particular evolutionary opportunity. Questioner. Now, as I understand it, the archetypes are the biases of a very fundamental nature that, under free will, generate the experiences of each entity. Is this correct? I am Ra. The archetypical mind is part of that mind which informs all experience. Please recall the definition of the archetypical mind as the repository of those refinements to the cosmic or all mind made by this particular logos, and peculiar only to this logos. Thus, it may be seen as one of the roots of mind, not the deepest, but certainly the most informative in some ways. The other root of mind, to be recalled, is that racial or planetary mind, which also informs the conceptualizations of each entity to some degree. Questioner. At what point in the evolutionary process does the archetypical mind first have effect upon the entity? I am Ra. At the point at which an entity, either by accident or design, reflects an archetype, the archetypical mind resonates. Thusly, random activation of the archetypical resonances begins almost immediately in third density experience. The disciplined use of this tool of evolution comes far later in this process. Questioner: what was the ultimate objective of this logos in designing the archetypical mind as it did? I am Ra. Each logos desires to create a more eloquent expression of experience of the Creator by the Creator. The archetypical mind is intended to heighten this ability to express the Creator in patterns more like the fanned peacock's tail, each facet of the Creator vivid, upright, and shining with articulated beauty. Questioner: is Ra familiar with the archetypical mind of some other logos that is not the same as the one we experience? I am Ra. There are entities of Ra which have served as far wanderers to those of another logos. The experience has been one which staggers the intellectual and intuitive capacities, for each logos sets up an experiment enough at variance from all others that the subtleties of the archetypical mind of another logos are most murky to the resonating mind, body, and spirit complexes of this logos. Questioner: there seems to have been created by this logos, to me anyway, a large percentage of entities whose distortion was toward warfare, in that we had the Maldek and the Mars experiences, and now Earth. It seems that Venus was the exception to what we could almost call the rule of warfare. Is this correct? And was this envisioned and planned into the construction of the archetypical mind, possibly not with respect particularly to warfare as we have experienced it, but to the extreme action, to polarization in consciousness? I am Ra. It is correct that the logos designed its experiment to attempt to achieve the greatest possible opportunities for polarization in third density. It is incorrect that warfare of the types specific to your experiences was planned by the logos. This form of expression of hostility is an interesting result, which is apparently concomitant with the tool-making ability. The choice of the logos to use the life form with the grasping thumb is the decision to which this type of warfare may be traced. Questioner: then did our logos hope to see generated a positive and negative harvest from each density up to the sixth, starting with the third, as being the most efficient form of generating experience known to it at the time of its construction of this system of evolution? I am Ra. Yes. Questioner: then built into the basis for the archetypes is possibly the mechanism for creating the polarization in consciousness for service to others and service to self. Is this, in fact, true? I am Ra. Yes. You will notice the many inborn biases which hint to the possibility of one path's being more efficient than the other. This was the design of the logos. Questioner: then what you are saying is that once the path is recognized, either the positive or the negative polarized entity can find hints along his path as to the efficiency of that path. Is this correct? I am Ra. That which you say is correct upon its own merits, but is not a repetition of our statement. Our suggestion was that within the experiential nexus of each entity, within its second density environment, and within the roots of mind, there were placed biases indicating to the watchful eye the more efficient of the two paths. Let us say, for want of a more precise adjective, that this logos has a bias towards kindness. Questioner: then you say that the more efficient of the two paths was suggested in a subliminal way to second density to be the service to others path? Am I correct? I am Ra. We did not state which was the more efficient path. However, you are correct in your assumption, as you are aware from having examined each path in some detail in previous querying. Questioner: could this be the reason for the greater positive harvests? I suspect that it isn't, but would there be logoi that have greater negative percentage harvests because of this type of biasing? I am Ra. No. There have been logoi with greater percentages of negative harvests. However, the biasing mechanisms cannot change the requirements for achieving harvestability, either in the positive or in the negative sense. There are logoi which have offered a neutral background against which to polarize. This logos chose not to do so, but instead to allow more of the love and light of the infinite Creator to be both inwardly and outwardly visible and available to the sensations and conceptualizations of mind-body-spirit complexes undergoing its care in experimenting. Questioner: were there any other circumstances, biases, consequences, or plans set up by the Logos other than those we have discussed for the evolution of its parts through the densities? I am Ra. Yes. Questioner: what were these? I am Ra. One more, that is, the permeability of the densities, so that there may be communication from density to density and from plane to plane, or subdensity to subdensity. Questioner: then, as I see the plan for the evolution by this Logos, it was planned to create as vivid an experience as possible, but also one which was somewhat informed with respect to the infinite Creator, and able to accelerate the progress as a function of will because of the permeabilities of densities. Have I covered accurately the general plan of this Logos with respect to its evolution? I am Ra. Accepting the actions of the unmanifested self and the actions of self with other self, you have been reasonably thorough. Questioner: then is the major mechanism forming the ways and very essence of the experience that we presently experience here, the archetypical mind and the archetypes? I am Ra. These resources are a part of that which you refer to. Questioner: what I am really asking is what percentage part, roughly, are these responsible for? I am Ra. We ask once again that you consider that the archetypical mind is a part of the deep mind. There are several portions to this mind. The mind may serve as a resource. To call the archetypical mind the foundation of experience is to oversimplify the activities of the mind-body-spirit complex. To work with your query as to percentages is, therefore, enough misleading in any form of direct answer that we would ask that you re-question. Questioner: that's okay. I don't think that was a good question anyway. Now, when Ra initially planned for helping the Egyptians with their evolution, what was the primary concept, and also secondary and tertiary, if you can name those, that Ra wished to impart to the Egyptians? In other words, what was Ra's training plan or schedule for making the Egyptians aware of what was necessary for their evolution? I am Ra. We came to your peoples to enunciate the law of one. We wish to impress upon those who wish to learn of unity that in unity all paradoxes are resolved. All that is broken is healed. All that is forgotten is brought to light. We had no teaching plan, as you have called it, in that our intention, when we walked among your peoples, was to manifest that which was requested by those learned teachers to which we had come. We are aware that this particular line of querying, that is, the nature and architecture of the archetypical mind, has caused the questioner to attempt, to its own mind unsuccessfully, to determine the relative importance of these concepts. We cannot teach for any, nor would we take this opportunity from the questioner. However, we shall comment. The adept has already worked much, not only within the red, orange, yellow, and green energy centers, but already in the opening of blue and indigo. Up through this point, the archetypes function as the great base or plinth of a builded structure or statue, keeping the mind complex viable, level, and available as a resource whenever it may be evoked. There is a point at which the adept takes up its work. This is the point at which a clear and conscious consideration of the archetypical mind is useful. Questioner: I have an observation on archetype 1 made by Jim and request comment by Ra. I will read it. Quote, the matrix of the mind is the conscious mind and is sustained by the power of the spirit, symbolized by the star which flows to it through the subconscious mind. It contains the will, which is symbolized by the scepter of power in the magician's hand. All of creation is made through the power of the will, directed by the conscious mind of the magician, and the bird in the cage represents the illusion in which the self seems trapped. The magician represents maleness, or the radiance of being, manifested as the creation through which each entity moves. End quote. I am Ra. As this instrument is becoming somewhat weary, we shall not begin this considerable discussion. We would request that this series of observations be repeated at the outset of the next working. We would suggest that each concept be discussed separately, or, if appropriate, a pair of concepts be related, one to the other, within the concept complex. This is slow work, but shall make the eventual building of the concept complexes more smoothly accomplished. Were we to have answered the observations as read by you at this space-time, as much space-time would have been given to the untangling of various concepts as to the building up of what were very thoughtful perceptions. May we ask if there are any brief queries at this time? Questioner: is there anything that we can do to make the instrument more comfortable or to improve the contact? I am Ra. It is well that the appliances for the arms were placed upon the instrument. We ask that continued vigilance be accorded these distortions which are, if anything, more distorted towards disease than at our previous cautionary statement. All is well, my friends. You are conscientious and faithful in your alignments. We appreciate your fastidiousness. I am Ra. I leave you now, rejoicing merrily in the love and the light of the one infinite Creator. Go forth then, rejoicing in the power and in the peace of the one infinite Creator. Adonai. Ra session number.
Greetings in the love and in the light of the one infinite Creator. Let us open our hearts with loving kindness for each other and recognize the divine within each of us as we discuss this law of one session and any related matters.
Thank you for that. So, of course, Rob would wait till the 90th session to say, hey, you know, it would be much easier if we put things in in an order when you're asking me questions. I'm like, couldn't you have done that in the beginning so that we weren't jumping all over the place? I remember the first time I read it, I'm like, what the heck's going on? This don't make no sense. And then you realize, obviously, like they jump around in subjects, but now he says it. That was funny to me. Of course, that would be what I would catch. Yes, Fred. Freddie.
I had two questions right off the bat. The first one is, now this is just my inference from everything that I've heard thus far in this session in particular and the last session. So it's my understanding that Ra has contact with, now I'm not saying all of us, but it would be all of us, with specifically Dawn, Jim, and Carla's higher selves, right? While they're doing this session?
Can you say that one more time? Because
Do you mean when they're talking about the fourth and fifth density friends?
No. I'm not meaning that. But that's a side leg to my question. Does Ra themselves, the social memory complex of Ra, have at the same time, now keep in mind, time is not linear, and once you get into higher densities, you understand the veil is removed and time is no longer what it is now. But would Ra have at the time, and I mean time like our earthly time, at the time of this contact, wouldn't Ra have had contact, immediate contact with Dawn, Jim, and Carla's higher selves, meaning their fourth, fifth, and sixth density selves, since simultaneity is the understanding of how things are, is just time is our a mechanism for our perception of third density. Time doesn't really have any merit. So it would have to mean that they had immediate contact with, it would be like, Ed, there was 7 of you. And one of you, you're correct. That's correct.
Yes. Either directly or indirectly. That would be appropriately so. So you're either directly under Ra, or one of your entities goes up to the 6th dimension and that sits next to Ra, and then they join again in the 7th dimension where everything becomes one again, and then you come back down through Ra. Whatever the case is, indirectly or directly, the answer is yes.
Okay, gotcha. Well, that answers my other question. Then my second question would be, so from their explanation, my assumption previously would be correct. The distance from the sun would mean the further you are from our sublogos, the increased the increased polarity change to say service to self, which would be increased bellicosity. Now, my question would be, is this the same or similar then all across all sublogi, all suns, either all suns in our immediate galaxy or maybe all galaxies? I don't know. Would that mean that that's an across the board thing?
This is an interesting one, and one I find particularly interesting when you study atoms and everything else like that, because
Yes.
we're talking on a planetary scale. But I think what we're talking about would have to be mirrored on all scales, being the fractal sort of pattern that we exist in, right? So the whole idea of centrifugal and centripetal forces is that it gets stronger or more potent towards the center. And while there's discussions about whether or not the universe flows in the same way as spirals do on the planet here, on the galactic level, in our galaxy, Ra does confirm that as you get further out in our galaxy, you do become more bellicose in your natural tendency. But that's kind of shaped like that. And that's partly the reason why it's slightly more positive, is because there's sort of a natural pull to bring everything back into the middle, kind of like a black hole mutual spitting out, vacuuming in all at the same time sort of function. That leads to a natural progression towards the ingrained laws of the universe, and the ingrained laws of the universe are always the same. So, that's my assumptions there. Now, on the other scales and other universes, that's interesting because he does say that there are some universes that are completely neutral. So in these ones, I wonder if there's like no neutral spin. Imagine that, no forward or backwards is going up or down, but just sort of spinning neutrally. And then imagine the atoms on that, like how would they all graph together and bounce about, like in terms of the structure of their physical reality, or what we refer to as our physical reality. Anyway, so then that would obviously purport that if the opposite were the case and you were in a universe that wanted to increase the likelihood of bellicosity, as the experiment might be, then they might have a universe that pushes things out, like a universe that does have a time limit, that is naturally going to blow up instead of having a constant renewing process to it. And in which case that universe would have a reverse order to it than what we have.
That would definitely increase some adrenaline, and got to get it done really quick.
Yep.
To make
biggest
things
alarm
get
clock
chaotic.
in the universe.
Yeah.
How does one spin neutrally? I'm just curious. I was trying to picture a neutrally spinning.
You know what? When Trevor was explaining that, Desiree, you're from New York.
I hear you.
You're from New York. You've gone to fairs, county fairs, and state fairs and everything, right?
Yeah. Yes, I
Okay.
have.
Have you ever rode a ride called the Zipper?
Remind me of which one that is.
It goes.
What's it do?
It has you're in a cage that spins.
Oh, and it spin. Hell no, I didn't go on that damn thing.
And it goes around in a track upside down, around in a track, and that whole entire track traverses vertically up and down. So you've got three directions.
Okay.
You've seen them, even if you didn't ride it. You've seen them.
No, yeah, I've seen it. I got it in my head.
And I was sick till the next day. I never rode one again. Well, that would be, I guess, the closest thing you could imagine in my mind to neutral spin, where you're spinning, you're either spinning in a circle this way, which is not neutral spin, or you're just spinning there, spinning, and that would be a neutral spin. But it could also be inside out of itself, like those remember those rubber tube filled liquid filled tubes that we had when we were kids that it went around inside of itself, and no matter how you held it, it would run
It
around.
was like a
Yeah, that
Yep.
would also be an example I would think of neutral spin.
Well, I appreciate you because you made very good examples. Now all
Thank
I'm
you.
thinking about me is having that thing in my hand because I know it, and it kind of just. But you know what you are laughing because you guys know exactly what it is, and that's what you. Whatever.
Sit and spin.
I'm not aware of what Trevor was referring to in terms of the neutral spin thing, but I do know they were saying that in the earlier creations they hadn't figured out service to self yet, and so everyone was service to others. And it was fairly recent they figured out the service to self thing as
Why
as
did
an
I feel like it
alternative
was the
route.
opposite?
Just
And
for clarity, all that I meant to say was that they have said that there are a couple of neutral universes that have been made where the sort of scale is 50-50, and so I purport and postulate that in such a universe that there might be such a natural spin cycle that has no lean this way or lean that way, and thus would be neutral spin. Just the idea that we
Yeah,
kind
he
of
just
took on an
wasn't
imaginary
here when you
ring.
were
Oh,
talking
yeah.
about it.
oh, okay.
He
okay.
kind of came in. He caught the last of it, what you were saying, Trevor, because he was taking care of things. So that's why I think you were a little question.
And I could see there's been theorized planetary systems around stars where there's a gravitational locking where the planet would be stuck facing the sun all the time in one direction. So one face of it would be really hot, the backside would be always cold. And then the terminator, the place in between the light and the dark, is the only little place where you could have life forms survive happily. And I can imagine that being an extremely warlike planet, because everybody wants that little strip of land that you can barely live on. That's almost like a neutral spin also, though, too, because it is spinning, but it's not a noticeable. It's held in gravitational lock.
Just like our moon,
Yes.
tidal lock.
Our whole
so-
universe, everything's freaking spinning.
Yeah, but
Robert,
Yes,
that
yes.
sounds like the premise for a very, very good movie.
I'm pretty sure it's been very well described in science fiction books. I haven't read them, but I'm sure I've heard of it somewhere. I don't.
That reminds me of a story I read years ago about. It was a fictional story about a civilization living on Mars, and they had a ball that traversed the entire planet every single day, and it only hovered like a foot and a half above the ground, and it went right through this one town, and there was a line or something in the middle of the town where the ball went, and everybody knew to stay the hell away from that spot during that time of the day, because there was this 100-pound ball that was going 4,000 miles an hour that shot through the town every day at this time. And I can't remember what the story ended like, but that just reminded me of that. Do you know what story that is?
No, I've not heard of that.
It was a science fiction story about Mars.
Oh, was it science fiction? Was it? Benny,
Desiree was there.
Benny, you get stopped with the spirit fingers now. Go ahead.
Could that have been Ray Bradbury?
Three simple questions, since we're talking about it's like the question before Richards or Fred. What do asteroids and comets do? Do they do a circular motion?
They have spin, yes. They do.
So what do they spin around the universe? Would you think, because there's a curvature in space, right? Would you say that the universe is actually on a track of a circle?
Well, I mean, look at our
Maybe not a
galaxy. Look
circle.
at how it all.
But we don't even look.
You could safely think that there is no such thing as stillness.
So inertia or whatever. Okay, so I got you.
There's constant movement of in the material world. It's constant.
And on the cellular level, if you think, and atoms, like, I mean, there's cells moving at, bacteria, whatever, everything is moving. So that's how I look at it.
Even on those other levels we've spoken of, those quantum levels, the information that flows from edge of universe to edge of universe, back and forth, it does it in like 4 seconds. And it's just endless movements.
So it's like our brain, basically, if you think about it. But that's just me thinking about it. So
Yeah. You're thinking me answering your question. Yes.
yeah. Okay, maybe. I mean, that could be very possible, but thank you, Robert.
No, this is your reality. We're just part of it,
I think we all have different realities, honestly. So I think we're all here, we come together once a week, but everything is different for everybody until you link up, and then it's the same thing. So
Yeah, we're all sharing something, even though it has differences, it's all very similar. I mean, it's one giant catalyst.
one giant shit show.
Yeah, you could say that.
Well, I think this ties into what Trevor was saying earlier, where I think if that's true that Ra has contact with our higher selves simultaneously when we're communicating here on Earth, I think we all do too.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Because the densities are permeable, like it said in that session also.
Go ahead, Andrew.
So I was just the spin doesn't have any relation to the spiritual aspects to my understanding, but there was, just closer to the center it's more service to others, and then farther out it's more service to self. And I was looking up the bellicosity, and they were saying that it was in Raw Session 24, it says the feelings of elitism, which led to distortions of power over others, which caused their own bellicosity. And so this feeling of elitism is one of the things that causes bellicosity, and that would certainly be associated with service to self, because they feel better than other people. And then another section, 2002-0323, they were saying how people so some people, I'll just read it. We find that the current circumstances upon your planet cause many individuals to question how this desire for peace within the self may be brought to bear upon a planetary level. For the suffering experienced by so many upon your planet, not only from acts of bellicosity, but from distortions present within your social complex, create a sense of burden and urgency within the individual. So to me, anyways, kind of how I read it the first time was that some people question whether or not we should have peace because they have this sense of urgency. And like a good recent example was the pandemic, where a bunch of people felt that they should not be kind and compassionate because they wanted to force people to be injected with substances, and they felt this urgency required them to have bellicosity rather than peace. And so it's important to kind of remember to be calm, and that all is well and all will be well, to kind of lower those senses of urgency so that you can promote peace.
So wouldn't this make sense though? Okay, you picture this, you're further away from the logos, you're further away from the sun, you have less heat, you're getting less light, you're getting less life energy, whatever you want to call it, from the sun. So we're kind of scientists like to call it in the Goldilocks zone, where you have a balance of both. You get to about Mars and you're getting to the outer limits of the Goldilocks zone. You get beyond that and you're cold. It's cold as fuck out there. I mean, you're talking hundreds of degrees Fahrenheit below zero. So now you see this here.
But was it like that with third density beings there?
Well, it would have been actually before now. If you stayed on our timeline, it would be worse because the sun wouldn't be as big as it is now in its life cycle. That's why when fourth density of what I'm seeing is as our sun enlarges, because our sun is the type of sun that actually gets enlarged and eventually is going to overtake the distance of Jupiter. Snickers, stop. So that would mean that's part of the reason why fourth density isn't going to work here anymore, or third density isn't going to work here anymore, as our sun starts doing what it's going to do to get into the stages it's going into. So wouldn't it make sense then, with given the example of what we have right here on Earth, you have certain areas that have extreme winter and extreme summer. Now, the people that live there have a stress put on them. They have a catalyst put on them. You have to prepare for winter. Everyone has to store food. Everyone has to have shelter. Everyone has to have clothing. Everyone has to have some type of bartering system in place in order to get those things if you can't procure them. So you live in the Caribbean, it doesn't matter. You don't have to work all summer long to store up for winter, because summer and winter are, you're going from 75 degrees to 110 degrees. It's not like you're going to freeze to death. So you look at the cultures that are upraised in those different climatic environments. You look at people like Eskimos compared to people in Jamaica. You've ever been to Jamaica? I've not been to Jamaica, but I've been to 3 other islands in the Caribbean. Those people are very laid back.
Yeah,
They're
but think
not in
about
a
it this
hurry.
way, though. So that's the catalyst for those people there. That's just my perception
Right.
as I'm listening to you, right? But
So
those in Jamaica have other ones that they don't experience either.
exactly. So when you get further and further away from the sun, you're getting less and less of the energy. You don't even have the experience that Ra. You think of how we're viewing Ra. Ra is telling us that they had 2 entities on their entire planet the entire time they were in third density that caused them problems. Dude, I could make a list of probably 1,000
Yeah,
different
but
names.
that's not Earth though. That's Venus. And that's what fucked it all up when they came here to teach, because they were teaching through the perception that we would be receptive and take it the same way that they did with the scenarios that they had there. So
You're exactly right. And think of how we're viewing Ra, saying, wow, those people they never had to experience this shit. They never went through this. So the
I think I
knowing
get.
that the
I think I get.
experiences are different, I couldn't imagine what an Orion entity would be experiencing, being thrust into everyone around you as service to self, and you're going, I don't want to hurt anyone. I just want to love somebody and somebody to love me.
When you get into the Maslow's pyramid in conjunction with your environmental factors, it would likely provide a really good framework to make a couple of further assumptions on in this type of thought pattern. And that would be like, in a place or environment where oxygen was extremely low and the prevalent life form had evolved to be oxygen dependent. Keep in mind that life forms can adapt to whatever they need in that environment, right? So first of all, you've got to have something that evolves. And if it gets to the point where it evolves and it becomes social, then that means that it's at a certain level of comfort in its cycle. Otherwise, it's going to be busy running around the place, dodging asteroids and trying to grasp onto a piece of rock in order to be able to grab a bit of sunlight, like in the case of a plant. Survival adds to the impacting factor of good and evil. So when you take care of survival and you kind of get to a semi-comfortable place with that, and that's a very loose interpretation or assumption point, that's when your social dynamics then start to come in, which is more along the lines of, well, let's make sure everybody's set up so that way they can all isolate and huddle in their own little igloos, and we can all keep an eye out for each other, or whether that becomes, no, fuck you all, you can do all the work because otherwise I'm going to shoot you. And so then I'm the warlord of that area. But as it turns out, even under that circumstance, that provides a good example of how the negative can become a positive, because under really extreme environments, your negative cultures like that, who are very empirical in how they dictate their order and exact justice, or whatever that might be seen as or labeled as, that could be a saving grace for a lot of people, because that might be, you know, a huge amount of technology that a single mother and two daughters might not be able to weld or circuit together. You know, like there's a whole bunch of different things that can come into play in larger, especially space aging in cultures and those types of beings. But yeah, when you bring in the safety factor of the environment, sort of cool that off to a point where whatever life form we're talking about can sort of live, then the social dynamics come in, and that's where you'll get your variations especially come out. And if we follow the logic of the law of one, I think what you're saying too is we might see more further or colder actions as you get further out into the atmosphere. So if there was a life form evolve on Pluto, that it might evolve to be more of a dictatorial society rather than a free-loving, everybody can do whatever they want society, because of the harsh living conditions of that environment, needing the life forms there to band together immediately under tight conditions. And that's very quickly done in what we call service to self. And that's the argument that they put forth, is that's the fastest way to do things, is by cutting out that, well, you can do it when you feel like it. It's like, no, everybody's going to fucking die. Get inside your house. You know, kind of the approach of the pandemic that some people had there. You know, so like Andre was saying, that can be a positive too under certain circumstances. But you know, again, Earth was a good example there, because there clearly wasn't a circumstance for that. So.
You had, I think Andre wanted to respond to you too, and then you're going to go right and go in another thing, and then he's not going to hold your thought there, Fred, and let him say what he wanted to say.
Oh, it's okay. It was just a quick thought.
Okay. Well, I just wanted to agree. I think Fred has a good point. And if we look at it, like, you know, the equatorial peoples are often fairly peaceful, like the Polynesians and things like that, like the Tecopians. You know, if you go to Tecopia, you know, they sing most of the time. They're just singing and harvesting fruit, and like, because there's abundance, you know, like there's I mean, like you say, you don't have to save up for the winter. And you know, if you look at history, most of the most bellicose people are from the northern areas, like Mongolia. Like the Mongolian Empire was the largest empire, and it's very far north. And then the Russian people, you know, right now they're extremely bellicose, right? And it's like that they have those gulags, and they're extremely cruel to each other.
New Yorkers.
Well, New Yorkers aren't that far north.
Well, I was being a smartass.
Yeah, but there are historically the Vikings, you know, the Vikings took over most of Europe. You know, now they've kind of reformed, you know, and the Swedish Social Democrats or whatever are at least kind of being nice to themselves. So there is hope in that sense. But I know the Confederation material also mentions that it's white people that are the most bellicose and create the most problems. And
of course, because we're white, because we have less melanin, because we're further away from those tropical places.
Yes, exactly, further away from the light. And like the white people, so some of them anyways were seeded from planets like the Pleiades, that came to our solar system. They were initially going towards Mars because they thought Mars would be a more suitable habitat for them that has less light. And then, like, when some of them crash landed here in like the Legend of Star Crash, Dolores Cannon, they said that they could only go outside at night because they couldn't handle the intense solar radiation of the daytime. And then they interbred with some of the indigenous up north. And that's why there were like white people up north here.
Them
when
damn
the
white
Europeans
people.
arrived. Yeah.
Yes,
Well.
can't stand them. No, I'm kidding.
Yeah.
Benny, did you have something too? I feel like you said something earlier.
I
I just
was
went
gonna
like this because I wanted to make sure that he had his chance to talk. 'Cause I seen him like he had.
Yeah,
Oh, yeah,
I
I'm
just wanted to finish a little bit that
Oh,
it's
sorry.
like it's not
Sorry.
all completely bad in terms of that I remember in the Confederation they were saying that the reason they allow at least some of these white more service to self entities is because they do have some benefits in terms of more intensely working with their personality.
So are you
discipline.
saying the Pleiadians are more service to self? Is that
No,
what I just drew from that?
I'm just saying that there's a higher
I'm asking.
likelihood for the white people to be service to self.
Okay, sorry.
Okay, go ahead,
For white
Benny.
people.
All I was gonna say is, I think we're going back like maybe 2 or 3 things. Don't forget about the desert, because I think Fred was talking about Antarctica and all that, or the Arctic Circle. That's harsh living too. Like, I mean,
Well, yeah,
those of you
that's what
that
he said.
see there's a few people who have seen my farm on here. So if you see that, it goes under greenhouse tents. I've grown everything from cucumbers to watermelons to everything in the desert. So I mean, I think everything is livable. So that's all I wanted to say. That's what came to my head.
Yeah, that's a good point too, Bene, because like it's basically areas of scarcity that have the highest levels of bellicosity. Like if you look at a map of the most wars in history, most of them were in Europe, but the second most was in the Middle East, where there's a bunch of deserts and stuff.
You adapt.
Well, yeah, I mean, I guess there's a war there too, but I'm not that close to Death Valley, but maybe like I'd say maybe about 75 minutes away. I'm up in the mountains, and if you don't put up those greenhouse tents, like it's some type of fabric, it makes the sunlight come through. I mean, you couldn't grow a thing. So I mean, without that, I don't see how you could survive there without hitting the aquifer. I mean, we only get 300 gallons a day out there, and we have to ship in water. So, I mean, you'd have enough to grow some food to get some water in your system, and that's about it, basically. So,
Well, those
we'll
deserts
just eat a
are
whole bunch
always
of
deserts. Those deserts used to be very, very, very plentiful land, and then it changed. But
yeah, there's a
anyway,
lot of gold.
anybody got anything they want to talk about?
But Fred wanted to say something.
Back to the reading. Oh, yeah. Well, go right ahead.
I can't remember exactly what it was. But Benny, you could grow cactuses out there.
Yeah, I mean, we grow yucca. I mean, yucca grows out there, and you can eat the roots if you've gone to like a El Salvadorian place, like you get the yucca fries that grows out there. I mean, everywhere there's nightshades, so like, I mean, you got to be careful. And then there's some type of mustard greens actually. So I actually have eaten those, because my uncle picked them, and they aren't too bad. That's all I can tell you.
But I do remember now what I was saying. I was going to just add to what Trevor was saying. One thing you have to remember in all of these catalysts and everything, it's a synergistic effect. It's not just any one catalyst causing service to self or service to others. Like there's no, oh, you live in Russia, so you're going to be warlike, or you're from Cuba, so you're going to be peaceful. There's no cut and dry. There's innumerable catalysts that create a synergistic effect. It's just what the thing that comes to my mind is Ra's coined term of the probability matrix would be higher for this here and that there. So yeah, you're basically looking at averages at that point. So yeah,
Sound, yeah. So okay.
if that makes sense.
It does make sense because I've lived in I got sent to Wade wilderness therapy programs when I was a teenager for I don't even know like a year and a half, but two different ones. I watched a kid die in front of me because he had some problem with his chest, but that's a whole other story. But I lived off a bow drill, living under a tent, cooking under a fire, making fire every day. Bow drilling coal, and I think it would work anywhere in those catalysts. But if you're up in the Arctic, obviously things are going to be way different. It's not like I can make rattlesnake traps because I've eaten rattlesnake, hundreds of times. You just cut right behind the venom gland and boom, I think it's just two totally different things, maybe two totally different cultures. But I do think, it's the same struggle no matter what. If you're living up there or living down there, if you're living up by, past the Arctic Circle, you only have, 4 or 5 months of spring and summer. So, and if you're in the desert, I live there, freaking, it's 110 during the day. It's 30 degrees during night. So, I mean, I don't even know how they even survive there without, help from what?
Because you guys you're talking about like this, but at the end of the day, still remember, one's here, whatever, it doesn't matter. You're still experiencing different things than over here. So no matter what, like you're not one people are just gonna have like all these catalysts and all this craziness here, and that's just it. Yeah, it's great, it's nice over here, but then they're experiencing other things that they don't experience over here. And then it's your free will regardless on how you're going to react and take those things that you've been given. Otherwise, we would all probably really be fucked already, like even worse.
Can I say what made me laugh? I was thinking about two polar bears fucking on an iceberg.
It's like I just remote viewed this, guys. Just remote viewed.
But you're 100%.
Let's pull back from watching. Let's pull back from remote viewing polar bears doing their dirty business as the Bloodhound Gang. But the one thing I wanted to bring up about this whole conversation that we've had today about the reading was the comment about the opposable thumb. That's one I found fascinating. Was the discussion as to why the logos that we're directly a part of is sort of at least appears to be semi-favorable to the upright monkey walking hominid form. And potentially they say, and it's just their opinion, the whole opposable thumb thing leaning towards tool adaptation rather than regaining of mental function. Like imagine if we never had thumbs, we were never a monkey that picked up a bone and started hitting a skull with it, but we're instead a monkey that sat down and meditated and went, and moved it with our mind power instead. Like that's a really interesting discussion, I find.
Yeah, that is, because it's like they're hoping to give that aha moment. So now they're being aware. Now you could do this with that.
Hey, can I just say, what's the point in putting my hand up if you're just going to jump in and say what I was going to say, dude?
You know what? I was going to say, this is as quiet as you've ever been.
About all that.
Ed, tell us more.
Saying, if you don't mind, Robert, you were going to say first.
Go right ahead.
Robert? You sure? Yeah,
yes.
I was going to say about the same thing, because we're talking about kind of like, the bellicosity and the negative and positive and negative things, like, so first off, the kind of the further you get away from the kind of the easier places to live, the more catalyst you get, whether that's a desert, whether that's a mountain, whether that's the Arctic, wherever, you're going to get more catalyst, which is what you come in contact with. Now, Ra said in there that, what was it he put, that the physical form follows the evolution from 2nd into 3rd. So essentially you evolve via what animals came before you into the 3rd density animal that you are, right? So, as we evolved from the monkeys and apes that we were,
Okay, Robert.
Yeah, go ahead,
Yeah.
Robert.
Ed got sucked
Oh,
into
well-
the vortex there.
Yeah.
Yeah, what Trevor brought up earlier
Your
on
phone.
this, he's talking about a centrifuge and how it spins and the things separate and like heavier goes towards the bottom and whatnot. That, and then I was going to bring it up also, and he just did, where the opposable thumb and speech ability were added into this Solar Logos's experiment. And it said only this Solar Logos and some of the neighboring ones have that kind of experiment going on, similar. So there could be systems further away from the center of the galaxy that are experiencing less bellicosity because of the experiment that is taking place. It's the facets of the experiment that, so we are having our own because of what we have. But I want to also say that distance from the sun thing was kind of interesting when you mentioned the most of the wars, the second most common place for wars was the Middle East. And that's where the lowest point on Earth is, the Dead Sea. So to be on the surface of the planet and yet be the farthest from the sun is in the Middle East at the Dead Sea. That's as close to
Sodom and Gomorrah.
Exactly. So that's somehow that became symbolic for the ultimate of man's evil too, in a way, being that far from the sun. And I don't even know if they knew that back then, if it was the lowest point on Earth, but it is. That's my thing.
And in the Himalayas, they do a lot of meditation and they're very nice to each other.
And and they're, they're not, the rays of the sun on the Himalayas are not as oblique as they would be at like the Arctic circles and stuff. So it's closer to the equator, sort of. And so, yeah, they're getting good solar energy in the Himalayas and being at a higher elevation. So, yeah, it's a great place.
Trevor?
I was just observing the natural, well, sorry, but it's not very natural, it's very counterintuitive. But what's the term? When something is opposite to one another and yet they sit right beside one another, when the opposites align. What's that term?
Complementary?
Yeah, kind of, but they're, well, all opposites are complementary in that, but there's a term for it that's often used, when paradoxes, when all the paradoxes are resolved. It's like when you view that scenario that Robert was just pointing out with a paradoxical sort of perspective, you can see in a logical way in which how that might frame a place where you've got a lot of bellicose potential, because it's kind of the furthest from the sun, right? But yet also closest to the core, but yet at the same time, despite that, it's also where the most water should be, the lowest point in the ground, and yet it's not, it's quite the opposite to that. And then looking at the opposites, you get a whole bunch of different sort of Vesica Pisces that jump out immediately there. My original point that I wanted to talk about was when we talk about the different planets and the evolution of the monkey type chain that we've got here, do you think that it would be vaguely appropriate to say that, because he was saying about what 5 to 15% would be suitable to say could walk upon the face of the planet and get away with calling themselves human. Some of them might be a bit like, well, you're not human, but then if they argued and were like in your face about it, no, I'm human, try to prove I'm not, you'd probably end up going, oh, all right, I'll give you the fucking benefit of the doubt only because I need a DNA sample otherwise. So in that frame of reference, do you think that other ones where, what's that one that they talk about where the different star nations of different animals, you know, so then you might have this whole other area of the galaxy where this logos has favored, say, octopuses, or this logos has favored horses, and that's where we get the mythology of the centaur is this place where the horse evolution took off, and so there is some form of, and we attach the anthropomorphic perspective to it, of course, but you know, that's what that would give framework for all of these ideas and these imagination concepts that we experience in childhood through our fantasy exploration and our dreams. Like when we imagine or we conceive of these things, it's sort of foundational to say that they exist in some level of existence. But then if you follow that, that would give rise to what Ra's talking about and a whole bunch of other things all at the same time. So question, is it appropriate to say in general, as loosely as possible, that there are different nations of different races of animal evolution, like different races of animals? Do you reckon those are like how we would be viewing the different races of aliens? Or are we looking at something that is mostly like out of Monsters, Inc., you know, tentacles and furry things?
Yeah. So like the various whistle blowers or whatever, they exactly say that there's lots of different species of extraterrestrials, and they vary, like, you know, like there's cat people and there's dog people and there's well, I haven't heard of horse people, and the centaurs are actually from Atlantis, like those human animal hybrids. Those are because of Atlantis. But in terms of one of the interesting ones is the praying mantis ones. There seem to be a lot of praying mantis extraterrestrials, which is like an insect, and there's ant ones as well. So basically every
the ant ones are very nice.
Yeah, the ant ones are nice. It's true. And so basically every single type of animal that we have on Earth, there's probably a planet where that's the dominant a third density life form. Ed?
Ed, you gonna go again? Try this again?
Yeah. You want to try turning off your video so that it doesn't cut you off?
No, I like watching them.
Okay, would this be better?
Okay.
I don't know.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you well.
Yes.
Okay, I'm going to talk slowly. If it stops, try to kind of bear with it. Maybe, I don't know.
Okay. We'll wait.
Okay.
So nobody else will. Yeah, we'll wait.
Okay, so I totally lost my train of thought. Okay, catalyst. Okay, as you go into harder places, you get more catalyst, right? So therefore, you know, you evolve. Now, Ra said about how, you know, we evolve following, you know, the animals from second density into third density. You know, these would be the apes that we evolved from, that spread across the planet over X amount of time. You know, maybe some star seeding occurred and whatever else, but, you know, you're still there? Yes? God, I'm afraid. Right, so
it's going well this time. I think you'll be fine because your video's off.
Okay, cool. Right, so has anyone heard of Blavatsky, like Helena Blavatsky?
Yes.
Yeah, so she talks about like the 7 races and how kind of, you know, as we progressed across the planet, each kind of step led to a different kind of race and, you know, different kind of step in evolution, as it were. And as you know, kind of got to the northern areas, you know, a lot of the time that led to them being kind of dominant over the others, meaning, you know, the service to self path would be more, you know, prevalent or whatever, like we were talking about. But then in what Ra was talking about in in this session, he was saying that the where is it? So the other logos, yeah, other than ours, they set up systems that are God, I keep being afraid you're all gone. That are negatively polarized. And he said that essentially, good. That you know, we've got thumbs and we've got speech, yeah, which leads you generally to using tools and to being warlike, you know. So because of the fact that it's warlike, you know, we are actually kind of set up to be negatively polarized entities. But, you know, the whole point of that is that gives us catalysts to become positively polarized entities, which is what our logos wants us to be, because it's all about love and everything else. But, you know, other logos but have systems where, what is it? Because apparently, like the logos and logos around us all kind of favored apes, for that expression of you know, catalyst and you know, specific distortions that lead to a positive outcome via a warlike beginning, I suppose. What other stuff were we talking about? Oh god, really threw my train of thought earlier. Yeah, anyone have any thoughts? A thumb's evil. A thumb's evil. I just want to know.
No. But they do make things more complicated and increase the amount of possible catalysts.
I have a thing with the logos. They also put a bias. Now the biases were placed there, and we could look and see which path we take. So I guess that there's a little manipulation there, maybe.
Yeah, and one of the biases you can see when you look out your window is that most of our plants are green. Because they don't have to be, you know, there's like red algae and there's blue algae. It could have been a different color. And then it would have created a bias that wasn't to the heart. You know, green is a heart ray. so there's a strong bias whenever you look out your window and look
Also,
at
just to add to that, dude, you know that the human eye can see more shades of green than any other color.
Oh wow, that's cool.
Didn't know that.
I mean, it's important for plant identification, that's for sure.
Right. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's a pattern recognition thing. You know, we have to be able to spot the thing that isn't green. So by seeing all the different variations of green, we'll be able to spot the thing that's trying to hide in it.
Yeah, if you're hunting, yeah. And then also, you know, if you're identifying a herb or something like that.
Okay, is it okay to talk about the bit where he was talking about the fourth density entities that are responding to the calling?
Sure.
Where he's talking about how these kind of dark angels, which I'm kind of assuming he was saying demons without actually saying it. They respond to the calling the same way that, you know, the other entities do. You know, they're drawn to the distortion that they can then target or whatever, and then they balance it with temptation or with pain or whatever else. But they work on the inner planes, yeah. So, you know, like the etheric levels, like the astral planes. That, you know, from reading the whole I am thing, the Saint Germain's thing, you know, he talks about how the astral planes aren't really anywhere. They are just this kind of like layers and layers of thought, and kind of Ra kind of aims at, talks about it kind of in that way too, you know. And he said, and you know, he says that, you know, the you know, dark angel demon type fourth density people, once they get inside our planetary kind of defenses, yeah, then they move in the inner planes rather than in the physical planes. You know, so would that be kind of like a, you know, like a lower density, or is it just in a anyway? Yeah, dude, jump in.
So I think the inner planes are inside the earth itself. So you know, like there's all like that magma and stuff like that. It's not just happening for no reason, you know. Like there's a spiritual reason for this core of our earth, and I think that's where, you know, the spiritual entities are. Like one of the interesting things was that when Maldek exploded, we had just gone over this in a few
Is
days ago, that they didn't go to the inner planes because there weren't any inner planes anymore. They remained as ghosts, just haunting the asteroids or whatever was left of their planet for 300,000 years, until someone came along and started harvesting them, or like moving them into the into time space. They moved them into time space in order to
Okay, dude.
yeah.
I'm just saying that I feel that kind of the way that Ra describes it, I don't think he's talking about a physical place. You know, like I agree with what you're talking about, kind of in that, but you could argue that the astral planes are created by the consciousness of the race, which would have also been shattered and fractured by the planet blowing up. So the kind of the astral realms that they would have gone to, if they, would have been destroyed as well. So I'm not sure that kind of the physicality of them being as in inner Earth is really what he's talking about. I mean, that's just my interpretation.
Yeah, I agree. It was different than the inner Earth in terms of like the hollow caverns and stuff where
No.
people
I mean, just like living inside the Earth. I mean, the astral planes are something like metaphysically very different to the physical planet.
It's time space.
Yeah.
But there's still an element of space.
Yeah, the way it's been described is like every single thought that's ever been thought by a race, every single one of them, if they all group together and chromatographically separated into individual kind of grouped, then that is what essentially forms the realms of, and that connects with the greater consciousness that everybody is part of. So, that's why anyone can step into the astral realms, and they're essentially the same place for everybody, because it's the same where all of those thoughts settled in their layered place, essentially. Yeah, like Trevor, like that's the way it's been described from what I've understood it. So I don't know. I feel that that's more what Ra's talking about, that these inner planes that we're all connected to, that are this huge repository of everything that's ever been thought by people, built into actually kind of like organized like landscapes, planes of existence, essentially. Because like the other bit that he talks about, that is the fourth D entities, they have to use existing pathways that are already there, things that have been abandoned, or things that are there but not being used. Whereas 5D entities, using magic, can actually just build their own roads, their own highways to wherever they need to go. So all of those things don't really speak to me as kind of, I don't know, a physical place, if that makes sense.
Well, they were saying that basically like service to self, demonic entities or whatever, or a confederation of planets, they all have to come in through the violet ray, but inner plane entities can come in through the root chakra, basically, because they're in the earth, physically speaking. At least this is my impression. Like I also remember reading a thing that they were saying that time space, it has, while it's a different kind of way of being, it has the same correlations in terms of that, like the time space here is different than the time space, say, on Mars or on the moon, because you're in a different location. And then you're kind of in one point in space, but you can shift through time.
Yeah. I mean, really, we all exist at all points in time, all simultaneously, because it's all oneness, right? But the whole kind of, the perception at that one point comes down to where you are inside the time-space crystal, right? If you're in the space-time part, then you're inside the space aspect. Whereas if you're in the time-space part, you're essentially observing the space part without being able to interact with it, because essentially you are just the time part.
Yes.
Anyway,
exactly.
Yeah. But
you're still in a location.
I'm still trying to get over that thumbs are evil. I'm just saying.
Well, I think that would be like saying Catalyst is evil. It's not
But-
necessarily evil.
But there is no evil. You just have choices to make. I
Yes.
mean, you can make
Okay, well
the
then the thumbs generally across the board are going to lead you to make choices about war.
well,
Is that what
That
it
is what he
said?
said. He said basically he's going to set us up, yeah, so that because we've got thumbs and because we communicate with talking rather than concepts, which means we're going to argue, yeah, right. That means that basically we're set up to be angry little monkeys from the start. Do you not agree, Andre?
It says here, okay, 9012. We also have the supposition that the so-called opposable thumb was looked upon as an excellent means of intensifying the veiling process, so that rather than rediscovering the powers of the mind, the third density entity would, by the form of its physical manifestation, be drawn to the making, holding, and using of physical tools.
Like guns.
It doesn't have to be guns. I mean, it could be, you know, like a mortar and pestle, you know.
No.
and
But
cooking,
the point
you know,
is,
like
it's supposed to increase the veil. It's supposed to stop us from
It does.
recognizing what we are. Yeah, right. So that's generally going to lead to, you know, these like, you know, service to self actions. Yeah, because we're not going to know. We're gonna kind of, you know, like argue, and we're going to smash each other, like Trevor was saying earlier. You know, without that means of communicating by concept, of course we're going to have kind of, you know, a conflict, as it were.
Well, exactly. You know, but I was just going to add to that.
And-
You know, my was either a Glock or a Molotov, but it postulates the same sort of conversation was postulating for me when I read this. The idea that there is some way in which the Logos might have an intention, you know, and such a thing is like, Ra suggests in a couple of places that the Logos having an intention has no capacity on the requirements for harvest, I think was the reference. But there are thus laws that the Logos has to be obeying, we might say. No, so I wonder if there are some Logos out there who venture into the realm of going, well, I'm going to see how fucked up I can make it. You know, some that we would call with a more negative intent rather than something that was more like, oh, well, let's set the main reference point to green. So everything is kind of coming back to the heart a little bit more. So, you know, something that was a little bit more just, hey, psst, here's how to make a gun. Hey, here's the ingredients for napalm, you know, like.
Okay, right. So, but this whole idea, yeah, that we were set up from the beginning to be violent, yeah. No, just hear me out, yeah. Right, that we were given these things to increase the veiling process, yeah, that would then make it more harder to discover what we are, giving us more, you know, a propensity for you know, service to self catalyst, you know, which is what, you know, they didn't have before, right? Yeah. Andre,
So here,
point, right?
let me just read.
So what I was going to say
Okay.
briefly, quickly,
Action.
yeah, right. Do you think that these other Logos, yeah, that are trying to make negatively polarized orientation, yeah, will actually make worlds that are really, really nice, yeah, like really, really lovely, yeah, so that then people can actually learn to take advantage of each other and learn to be horrible, yeah, as a negative, like, you know, trying to become negatively polarized, like the opposite of what it is here. You know, here's pretty shit, so we're trying to learn to be better and rise above it because, you know, we've all got thumbs and that makes us evil, right? So we've got to be better, you know, get rid of the thumbs, learn by thought. Anyway, the point is that, you know, do you think there's other planets where they start off with spiritual and they have to learn to hate and kill each other to then polarize negatively because that's what their Logos wanted? Like, you know, they have to develop thumbs.
Well, no, I don't know. I don't think so. I think it is possible that some Logos do set it up negatively, but here, can I just read the 9018 here? So it says, I'm Raw. It is correct that the Logos designed its experiment to attempt to achieve the greatest possible opportunities for polarization in third density. It is incorrect that warfare of the type specific to your experience was planned by the Logos. This form of
Yeah, it
expression,
wasn't planned,
yeah, the
but
hostility
we
is
chose it.
is the result of apparently concomitant with the tool making ability. The choice of the Logos to use the
Yeah,
life
that's what I
form with the
mean.
grasping
Co-committed
thumb.
with the tool making ability. So we
Yes,
have thumbs.
it's a
we
side
make tools.
effect.
So we're
That
gonna
was
go to
what he
war.
was saying. I was listening. He was
Okay,
saying
okay.
that. You're right, Ed.
It's a side effect. But you're right in that if there was a Logos that wanted to make a service to self entities, then I think that what they would do is they would have thumbs, and then the vegetation would be like blue, or it would be like yellow, or some, so it's one of those chakras that's probably blue, indigo. And
I think we were given what we were given. We were given all the tools. Like here's everything for both sides, and then now you choose. So I mean green, oh heart, but it's also greed. Like there is a balance there with all of it. I feel.
I agree, but I think that that's what Trevor was talking about earlier about the neutral polarization.
Because he's a genius.
You know,
if he agrees with me, he's a genius.
Well, no, but you know what I mean, that he is, but you know what I mean, that the whole kind of, if you were going to get something in the middle, then you'd give everybody all of the tools and you'd give everybody equal catalysts to try to get them all to be a balanced middle pillar society, whatever it is. You know, the point is our Logos wants us to be positively polarized. You know,
so, I think I'm remembering now what Trevor was talking about in terms of the neutral. So basically, our Logos has a positive bias, and that's why the vegetation is green, like among many other things. And then, but there are Logoses that have a negative bias, and then some that have a neutral bias, where they're not biased either to service to self or service to others. And so that is possible. It's just not where we are. Where we are, there's a service to others bias.
Exactly. But if you think about thumbs, let's put thumbs on a fine motor skill level. Because I have motor skill problems. I mean, my right hand doesn't work fucking it's fucked up. But
that's because they're evil. You have problems with them because they're evil, remember?
Well, my right hand is evil, and my left hand is an angel. So I think, let's think about it on a physical level. I mean, if we didn't have thumbs, we couldn't pick berries without, going sideways, because I go sideways to pick things. I mean, I do things completely different. I just don't see how we could survive without thumbs. And, maybe that's just what all y'all got to think about at the end of the day. And that's not really coming from me. That's just between me and Desiree, but she knows there's some what?
I was showing gratitude to my thumbs.
Yeah.
We should just all take it like a baby and just suck it.
That's what I was going to bring up too. Then, if we didn't have thumbs, what would teething infants be doing? I mean, they'd suck on. Yeah, okay, like that.
What would have sparked the freaking idea to make the tools that we need, that they made, to start them thinking, to realize oh shit, we're not these dumb, and we could do things.
It wasn't even like that. It was all a clusterfuck. Like, I mean, they were trying to create something, and then it just all came together, and then somehow, at a certain point, they were like, holy shit, okay, we got this. So friggin'
I got you.
So if you look at the picture I sent you, if you scroll up in the text, I mean, there was Homo erectus for like 10 to 15 different things.
But I also believe, though, that we were intercepted in there somewhere, and our DNA was messed with, and we were actually a lot. I don't feel like a lot of us now actually come from those examples anymore, because at one point. But okay, that's what you're saying. I'm just letting you know what I believe.
Didn't Ross say something about this in this session as well? Didn't he say about how we are influenced by two different sets of influences? We've
Well,
got like
22.
the solar, and we've got the kind of spiritual influence. But
Man,
then we've
why is
also
it
got
going
the
out so much?
ancestral, DNA based influences that come from the Earth, that come from the planetary influence.
Well, yeah, and the planet is composed of all of the atoms and such from stars that lived their lives and exploded and sent all this material out into the universe. So the planet is composed of many different star systems, material, basically. We are
Hey,
the
when you say
children of
star,
stars.
you mean logos, right? We're made of dead, exploded
Same
god
thing.
things, right?
Yeah, we're
Carbon.
the children of expired solar logoi. Yeah.
That's called Children of the Sun, Robert. That's
Children.
who sang that? I can't remember the band. Children of the Sun. That was one of their biggest hits.
I saw them in concert. I can't remember the name.
Did you? That makes me jealous.
Oh, it was great.
Can I just throw a hypothesis out here? So let's just say, all right, so all these different star nations, whatever, all right, higher beings than us, then, they're not higher beings, but they're more developed, technology wise, maybe some of them mentally and spiritually. Yes. And what happens if they all came together and said, okay, we're going to go to Earth and we're going to just make this happen. All right. And
that's what they're doing.
And yep, that is exactly right. So they are going to go put all this together, and it's just a little piece of everyone. And then you just have a choice. You're going to pick which parts that are running through your DNA, friggin' vibrating through your body. And then you're going to just rep your set. I mean, that's just basically it. I mean, I don't know the way to put it. I'm not educated like y'all, but, I think, I grew up around things that betrayed things that weren't so good. So, every day I wake up, I just have a choice and I just live my life and I do the right thing and I don't have anything to worry about besides smoking. So, and that's the biggest thing on my mind, am I going to die from this? So, every day I wake up, I have a choice and I make the choice and then I go to the next choice. And then it's kind of like the string theory, but there's like many strings within strings just on Earth. It's just not outside of the universe. So, I mean, that's what karma is, isn't it? Your strings coming back to you. So, I mean, that's just a thought to have. I don't expect any response. I'm just thinking the way I think. So, and the only other thing I want to know is, what are you knitting, Sherry?
I think you said it just fine. You're like, oh, I'm not as educated as you guys. I think you said it perfectly fine. Stop putting yourself down.
Well, I mean,
and I think that's very much what's going on now.
If you going up against Andre or whatever,
Do you think that half of us don't understand? When Ed, Trevor, and Andre or whatever, they start going, you think I understand what they're saying half the time? I have no idea.
I do 100%.
I just sit there and I'm like, I start writing other people. Are you lost? Yeah, me too. Okay, cool. No, I'm kidding. I'm really joking. That didn't happen.
It's getting dark in here, guys. So like,
Andre, I think you wanted to comment on what he was saying because you typed something, and then Robert, after he's done, if you're up for closing us. Because
we still didn't hear what
Sherry hasn't said.
Oh, I didn't even know Sherry was. I'm sorry, Sherry. I was in the other room just listening, so I couldn't see my screen.
That's
I'm making right.
It's crocheting, not knitting.
Oh yeah.
I'm making
that's pretty.
It's a flower of life top.
That's
nice.
Pretty.
Mm-hmm.
I sleep with my baby blanket that was knitted by my great grandmother that came over here from Nova Scotia and her ship burnt down on the Atlantic or some crazy shit. But you know, they left me with that in case if I ever have a baby, because I could wrap up the baby and it won't ever suffocate. So, you know, with the little holes in it. So I mean, that's all I can tell you. That's why I was wondering.
So there was just one last thing I wanted to add. I was just thinking, like, there aren't actually any blue plants, at least blue that I'm aware of, but there are red plants. And so I think STS world would have red
Succulents,
plants.
man. There's loads of them. There's loads of blue succulents, man.
Oh,
There's loads
blue
of blue
succulents?
succulents.
Oh, okay. Well,
Oh.
maybe so either blue or red would work for an STS world,
Andre, you need
and then
to
brown
get
for neutral.
a black light, and you'll see blue and extremely red plants.
Oh, okay.
We're only
you-
seeing things in a limited perspective of the visual spectrum. Dude, I collect Vaseline glass, and Vaseline glass glows like crazy in a black light. So I bought a decent black light. And just for shits and giggles, one night, my buddies and I went out around my lake and we were shining the black light around. The dogs were chasing it. They didn't even know what I don't know if dogs can see ultraviolet light better than we can or not, but it's very obvious the color difference when you shine your black light on plants, especially at night, because they're not receiving light from the sun for photosynthesis. So they actually change color from daylight time to nighttime. Just an experiment, do it and see, you'll see what I mean. It's beautiful and kind of crazy what you see. But yeah, us seeing them as green that's just us calling it green. That don't mean it's green. You know what I mean?
Also, when you look at flowers, loads and loads of flowers under UV light, they've actually got like little like runways and things like painted on the leaves to direct the insects into the flower, but we haven't got the photoreceptors to see UV light properly, so we wouldn't see it in the flowers, but all the bugs can see it shining like a big glowing light on the petals.
Yeah,
So
my
good birds, they see
my
she-
buddy's mom is a beekeeper. You would be amazed at the things that flowers have to direct bees and wasps and hornets, whatever pollinates them, that it's acclimated exactly.
Oh, Fred, you muted yourself or something. Oh, now your video's off. Oh, okay. Well, the other element I think that a service to self world would have is that there would be a large amount of scarcity, and like little pockets of people, and it wouldn't be like unified. So I think we have a good STO bias here.
You know, somebody recently on a different thing I was looking at was arguing how an extremely warlike culture wouldn't even be able to survive their planet enough to get off of it to experience interstellar travel because they would destroy themselves. But I realized that what if there were other planets in their solar system that were inhabited? Because there can be multiple ones in a system at the same time. And one of the warlike planets attacked the other planet and didn't destroy their own, but destroyed others and used their home as a base and used other planets as the resource collection units. And then they could move outward that way. They didn't have to destroy themselves. So,
and then they killed off all the Minnetonka, basically. So,
Isn't that what happened to the people on Mu, Robert?
Mu sank due to natural causes.
Oh, it was natural?
Yeah, it was Atlantis where they were warring. Well, they weren't really warring. They got too greedy for resources, and then they popped a hole in their dome volcano. That was their continent. And it could cause the 40 days flood or whatever.
they were like misusing magic. And
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Yeah, Mu Lemuria was more closer to animal nature, humanoid creatures. I don't remember
Yeah.
exactly. Blavatsky spoke about it a lot.
Yeah.
Have you guys read the New Atlantis by Francis Bacon?
No, I haven't.
No, because that's it was kind of his unfinished book. But in that he talks about stuff that, well, he talks about genetic experiments. He talks about crystal powered power sources, stuff that they hadn't even kind of envisaged at that time. That he just talks about like it's kind of normal. It's kind of worth a read. It's kind of cool. The other one, that book about Atlantis that I mentioned the other week, the kid, this 19-year-old kid that just started channeling. I think it was written in 1880 or something. And this kid just started channeling loads of stuff about Atlantis. And some of the stuff he spoke is absolutely mind-blowing. Like talking about how they had a propulsion system that basically just was like a little ball that you sat in. And it just basically was anti-gravity and it just went up in the air. And then the earth spun underneath you. And then it went back down. So you could like traverse the whole planet. And that was, in Atlantis, apparently. So both worth a read.
Yeah. And I just wanted to add that both an STO and STS polarized planet achieve world peace. When they polarize, because the STO, because they're just love and kinder to one another, and so they have no need for war. But the STS planets achieve world peace because they form a global hierarchy, and everyone is part of that hierarchy. Okay, Robert.
And we're not polarized.
I think we are.
We haven't. Yeah, we haven't finished.
I think it's
So
Earth.
we're whatever the fuck we want to be. No, it's just third density.
Well,
all right. Yes, let's close this shit out. It's not shit. I love you all, but I want to eat my rice.
Yeah. Within the next few centuries, we'll be polarized.
What are you eating, Des? Are you eating Puerto Rican
Rice.
beans?
No, it's just jasmine rice.
Just
I
eat your
love jasmine
rice. I eat during the Zoom call.
Yeah, but I have another meeting at 10. I'd like to have a little me time.
Fair enough.
Unapologetically.
You deserve some me time.
Wait, you guys can keep talking and I'll close the shit out and it'll keep going. I can make you host.
My dog demands a walk.
Okay.
Ed's very excited about that.
I have to leave. You guys can stay. I got it. My dog needs to
All right, so
walk. Yeah.
Robert, you close this out, and then whoever wants to stay, I'll make Fred host, and you guys can keep talking until my meeting at 10.
I actually have to cook for my son's fiance.
Oh, okay.
So
So
why'd
everyone's got to go.
Poor Ed. Ed was so freaking looking forward to it.
Ed,
that makes me upset because I love talking to Ed.
Ed, can you contact me on Facebook or something? Because I really want to add you to my podcasts because I think you would be really great.
Yeah, that'd be yeah. See, now go talk to him after that.
Yeah. Oh,
all right.
I would love that anytime you want, dude. Seriously, I would love that.
Okay, can you message me or something?
Yeah, come on.
Are you in
I'll add
the
you.
chat groups, the Law of One chat group or something?
Yeah,
I'll add you, man. It's so good.
Okay, you add me. Yeah. Okay, cool. Sounds good.
Awesome. Yeah.
All right.
Exciting.
Awesome.
It is.
Okay.
All right, Robert, please, my dear.
Yes. Thank you, everyone, for being with us here today. Everyone also being Ra, the Confederation of Planets, all of our angels and higher selves, the future, the present, and the all present now. Please be with us, and we are strengthened together. May our love always grow stronger. Service to others is the plan for this man, and we are heading forward. And laughter is always a good thing. So may we go in peace to love and serve others along with ourselves as we eat our rice. Thank you very much. Love you guys.
Thank you. Love you guys.
Love you all. And we leave you in the love and in the light of the one infinite creator. Go forth, therefore, rejoicing in the power and in the peace of the one infinite creator.
So it is.
Love you guys. Thank you so much for being here and
Being
all the
us.
things. Just every week, I look forward to this. Thank you so much, guys.
Me too, but
Love
good
you.
night, you fucks. Have a
Good
good
night, yeah, Fox. He goes.